We are one, but we are different. We're from all around the world. We share the same sun, we share the same ocean. We are every boy and girl. Come together and share our dreams. We be amongst the stars, and we know that it's destiny, and we are unity.
It's my great pleasure to introduce Mr. Weston Bruner, who is Director of Advancement of the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences at the University of Queensland. Mr. Bruner is going to give us an address entitled Pathways to Peace, the Role of Secular Institutions in Interfaith, which is a topic I'm quite interested in, so that I'll be looking forward to hearing what you bring forward, Weston. Weston is a fundraiser. He's, as I said, Director of Advancement at the University of Queensland, but he's also been a Development Manager at the University of Adelaide, Assistant Director of Development at the Elliott School of International Affairs in Washington, DC. He's been a Finance Director and a Development Research Analyst at the University of Michigan. So he's got quite a number of skills and certainly a lot of experience in the fundraising area, so and development and all those associated areas of life that universities and other institutions need to in order to keep going. Would you please welcome Weston to the podium?
It is an honor to be here, especially since, to be honest with you, I'm probably the least qualified person that you're going to hear from today. I do not have the long scholarly reputation that some of my predecessors do. In fact, my connection to academia is by being around it for the last 13 years. And while I'm a fundraiser, I will not be asking any of you for any money at any stage in this conversation or afterwards. There, one in the audience, thank you, good night. No, the conversation I'm going to talk about is built on my experience with engaging with different populations. Because in the humanities and social sciences, I meet with people, anyone who cares about the arts, anyone who cares about history, anyone who cares about different ways to experience the world. That's who I touch. And I always look at what linkages are we putting together? Who are we connecting with and who are we not? And the biggest surprise I always have is I meet someone and they have this great idea and I'll say, you know that Dr. So-and-so over there is doing the exact same thing, but of course people aren't talking to each other. And here I hear about having this tremendous long table where we're addressing these critical world issues. And so when I thought about the theme of we are one, we are many, I thought, who's missing? Who's at that table? What resources do we have to leverage that we aren't at this stage? So my job, essentially, more than anything else, is to bring people together. And so my talk is about how to create a wider, more informed, more open dialogue. This talk is not really directed at the model city that we're in today. It's directed at the flawed world around it and how we can expand from here. It's not. Other way? There we go. See, I thought the forward button would work. Anyway. So this is a really important thing. So I put this a crisis of faith, but it means a crisis of faith in many different areas. It's not about necessarily religious institutions, but it's trust in general. So, and this is a statistic that I'm going to use a couple times. In 2016, 30.1% of Australians identified as no religion, up from 22.3% in 2011, 12.9% in 1991, and 0.8% in 1966. I don't believe that this means necessarily no interest in religion, as we'll see in a moment. It is merely people who are willing to subscribe to one of the disciplines that we find behind us. So religious affiliation tends to drop in every developed nation, and I would love to hear what our esteemed academics hear about the the theory that as economic qualities increase, as stability in life, as general social services are met, that people tend to pull away from these areas. So I look at this and what is our goal? Why do we want people to understand different faiths? It's not as self-explanatory as you might think. Our goal is for peace, for harmony, to cross cultures. But are we doing that right now? Do when people hear about learning about different faiths, if they are coming from that no religion group, are they actually hearing that? Do they realize the connect? So I love this statistic. So 26% of Australians expressed a lot or some trust in religious institutions. That was tied with the federal government, lower than business, and higher than political parties. So we've got that on all the parties. On the other hand, 75% of Australians expressed trust in university researchers. That was a surprise to me. That was actually a pretty shocking number, given what I've been hearing. So the voice matters. It's not just the information. We think the knowledge will speak for itself, but it really doesn't. So how do we get that voice out? We want to just go out and tell people. Great. Let's just go out and shout it from the rooftops. The problem is we're not just communicating different messages, we're communicating with different groups of people. When we communicate, we're addressing prejudices from the very start. And the prejudices depend on the generation, and I'm sure there are deeper cuts we could take, but I find it fascinating that it seems that as people get older, their prejudices get deeper. And so when we're talking to someone of the millennial generation, we're talking to somebody with a different set of pre-based affinities. And where is that coming from? What are the education? What is the experiences that lead people towards that further, that as they get older, their prejudices get deeper? And these prejudices manifest themselves in very distinct ways. So I almost titled this slide, "Would you ask Tony Abbott to explain the Green Party?" Because that's how people view religious understanding. Yeah, I almost had the slide, "Would you ask Tony Abbott to explain the Green Party?" So the idea is people listen to where the voice is coming from. And they inherently do not trust people of one faith telling them about other faiths or about their own faith because they realize that people come with pre-existing biases. And so they'll give you the yeah, okay, but what's the catch? Because they think that the goal is not to increase peace, they think that the goal is to increase the flock. And one does not necessarily lead to the other. And I find that this slide is interesting because I think that people will find their religion, their version of truth, and they stop. They're like, great, I found the truth, I found happiness. This is great, this is perfect for me. I'm going to go tell everybody what I found out about me. But that's just the first step. And as we've seen, that there's a lot of different pathways to peace. There's a lot of different pathways to get to the same understanding, and that's really the foundation of why we're here. But folks become ingrained in their own. And given the fact that we're trying to communicate a message that people aren't really receiving, how can we leverage the sources that are still remain seen as credible and partner with them to spread knowledge more effectively than it is right now? So I'm going to assert that we have not yet appreciated the synergy and opportunities that our largest and most powerful education institutions, our universities, can provide. So yeah, I love this one. Aren't universities atheist? I get that a lot. There is a preconceived notion that universities are inherently anti-religion, which is interesting given that that's where religious studies started in the modern era, and it was a founding discipline at just about any of the sandstone universities in Australia, I'm sure many of the other ones. Religion is the pursuit of truth. It's an understanding of truth. Universities try to do the same way, as much as the federal government tries to tell them otherwise. They try to do the same thing. The issue is that the universities are obligated not to stop in a certain place. That's confused with atheism. And there's also this distinction between secularism, which universities are very committed to, and atheism, which is a distinct group of thought in and of itself. It is a strict belief system, essentially. So many secularists are themselves believers. They may not subscribe to inequality in the public sphere, the protection for all, a preference for none. So secularism is actually a system of protection. It's to ensure that everyone has the equal voice. And it's misunderstood and misapplied in common dialogue. So I'll give you an example. Prior to the rise of secularism in the UK, until 1828, no one could hold public office without signing up to the beliefs of the church. Until 1836, only Church of England ministers could conduct marriage. Until 1871, only members of the Church of England could teach at universities of Oxford and Cambridge. So it's not the absence of religion so much as protection. So Dr. Renee Barker notes that secularism allows people of all faiths to freely express their religious beliefs in the public sphere. Quote, what secularism in Australia says is that if you want to express your religious belief as to euthanasia, as to terrorism, as to marriage laws, as to abortion, you're welcome to do so, but your views are no more important than someone of another religion or someone who has no religion. Samuel Blanch adds, the secular condition on which we live is not the death of religion. It is about religion's emigration into the private subjectivities of the modern people and far clear of people's wallets and workplaces. Secularism is not an attack. It is a defense of religion. What happens when secularism does not exist is one religion, usually the religion of the majority or the plurality, takes over others. And the universities are committed to this value. They're not allowed to be as public about it, but it's a space where every area is able to operate. And the idea is, well, the more education you have, oh geez, there's a perceived correlation between the amount of education someone has and the amount of level of religion. However, the studies that have actually looked into this, and I love Schwadell's research from the University of Nebraska, finding those born in the 1970s, people with college degrees are more likely than others to have religious identification. And this is important because it's a longitudinal study. It shows changes over time. So those who he studied early on, who then didn't go on to get degrees at universities, actually ended up less religious over time. As he writes, belief in God and regular prayer increase with years of education. The more education one has, the less likely one is to hold exclusivist, I'm going to get that eventually, religious viewpoints. So when we talk about the younger generations, these being seen as less religious, it might just be that they grew up in a secular society where religion isn't as public, and of course that has its drawbacks, but they also don't have as much education yet. Schwadell's study hasn't yet tackled millennials because they haven't aged yet out of this. So these populations he studied in the 70s, in fact, they went through their 20s, starting in their 20s, they started to get more religious. So they were seen as atheist, or at least agnostic when they were at university, but as they got more years of education. And I subscribe that that is because they got more exposure to different world viewpoints, and they felt more opportunity to go exploring other ideas. So I love this quote from the Atlantic's Emma Green. Clearly, those God-defying philosophy professors need to work a little harder if they want to build their armies of atheist young people. Because right now it doesn't look like they're doing it very well. So what are universities actually teaching? Well, I'll swing through this pretty quickly because universities aren't teaching as much studies in religion as they were before. I mean, we talk about, well, we're all about innovation and career readiness, but we're not doing the things that allow people to go out into the world and understand one another. So there's this demand-driven focus for higher education. There's an overall pull away from the humanities. But what that's doing is it's churning people out who, yeah, they know how to be an accountant, but they don't know how to talk to their neighbor. There's no place in the dialogue right now for studies in religion. And it's not just a matter of training people to be religious. I'll go back to training people to be religious. It's giving people the exposure they need to actually execute peace in the world. So I found this really interesting. More than 4 in 10 Catholics in the United States do not know that their church teaches that bread and wine used in communion do not merely symbolize, but actually become the body of Christ. Fewer than half of Americans know that the Dalai Lama is Buddhist. More than 4 in 10 only 4 in 10 correctly associate Vishnu and Shiva with Hinduism. And only a quarter of Americans correctly answer that most people in Indonesia are Muslim. So why does it seem that atheists seem to know more about other religions? It's because, again, they didn't get locked in early in life in one place or another. And there's this sense, increasingly, that people have wanted to try to tackle issues of violence, issues of war, issues of cultural understanding without tackling religious understanding. And that's starting to come around, and I've seen it a bit at the University of Queensland. But it's a huge gap in knowledge. I see cultures trying to talk to each other without any idea of where their belief systems meet, and that's something that has to be answered. So, my basic point is that universities are not the enemy in this case. In fact, they've been the ally since the beginning, and they're not able to take a position one way or the other. And it's not just a matter of encouraging people to take that extra elective in world religion. It's not a matter of simply trying to attend a few seminars, but actively realizing that universities can be part of the answer, can put that seed that Schwadel has shown leads to religious interest at the very least later in life. So I look at who's at the table, and we're missing a lot of seats. So there are many ways to truth. There are many challenges to address along the way. And I want to make sure we have a strong team to get us there. Thank you very much.
I'm sure Weston's going to remain on site for a while yet. If you've got any thoughts or questions you'd like to raise with him over a cup of tea or coffee or juice or whatever. I have a message before we move into our next panel discussion from David Janetsky, who is our local federal MP. He's unable to be present today, but he sends this message, which I read. As an elected member of Parliament, I take very seriously the need for our community to be peaceful and inclusive. That's why I'm delighted to support this conference. I regularly speak in the Queensland Parliament about our community in all its multicultural glory, our welcoming of the Yazidi community and the extraordinary Darling Heights State School, where half the student body speak another language in their home, to name just a few of our amazing experiences. I acknowledge the efforts of the organising committee and thank Pure Land for again hosting this important conference for our city, our region and our state. And that's from Mr David Janetsky MP. So would you please acknowledge that? And we'll pass on the conference's thanks for the message to Mr Janetsky at some point. I've got a nod over on my right, so all must be well there. I'd like to invite Nicole Rangiira, Jagdish, Narayan, Ida Walker, Jamal and Imam, Zara, to please come forward. Our panel discussion will be on promoting social harmony in our diverse community, and I'll draw your attention to the slide regarding questions, please. Please text your questions to the number 0470012958 or write them out on a piece of paper and give them to Mei Ling, and they will be given to the chair, and the chair will direct the questions to particular people. So I hand over to Nicole. Would you please welcome our panellists and our chair?
Thank you. It's certainly my honour to be here with you this afternoon. I'm sure you've had a wonderful, valuable day. And for those friends of mine who have not yet greeted, it's good to be here with you. And to the new friends that I look forward to meeting, thank you for being here. So our topic this afternoon is promoting social harmony in a diverse community, and my role is to introduce you to our speakers and then to facilitate an opportunity for you to have your questions answered the best that we can, okay? So with that in mind, it's with great delight that I introduce you to my friend. My friend's name is Jagdish, and I have taken great delight in recent years in getting to know Jagdish, and I'm really pleased that he has this opportunity to share with you his reflections on promoting social harmony. So I just want you to know that, to begin with, that I'm actually the Catholic rep on our Toowoomba Interfaith Working Group. So that's how I get to be here, and that's how I've got to become friends with Jagdish. And so Jagdish, like I'm the Catholic rep, Jagdish is the Christadelphian rep, so he's actually here representing the Christadelphian Church, and he has been the rep since 2011, and he's actually a day preacher at the Christadelphian Church where he's there, and as a Christian man, he's actually belonging to the Christadelphian Bible Mission. Jagdish enjoys promoting interfaith peace and harmony in our community. He also appreciates his involvement in pastoral care services and provides voluntary service for JP work. So with great delight, put your hands together and please welcome Jagdish and his time with us.
Thank you, Nicole, for your introduction. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, friends and young people. Welcome, Namaste, Sat Sri Akal, Salam, Amitofu. I acknowledge the tradition owners of the land on which I stand, and I pay my respect to the elders past, present, and emerging. Friends, my topic has been announced is promoting social harmony in diverse community. Well, is it possible? Some might say, no. Some of you may say, it's hard. But I believe it is possible, provided we all individually try. But before I go on, I'd like to look at some principles of social harmony, so we understand what social harmony means to a layman person, or what does diversity mean to a layman person. And where did diversity emerge? Why are we talking about diversity? Why are we talking about differences? Where did it come from? Well, this is a very complex topic. And to different people, it can mean different things. But simply, harmony means happy. That we could live happily by side together. As Jesus said, don't do unto others as you would want done to you. But this does not mean, Jesus did not say, that you will resolve all conflicts and problems. However, we can make attempts towards removing some of the inequalities, injustice from our society. It can be done by individually, it can be done by a committee together, collectively, it can include governments, that we can live together in harmony, in peace. Fundamentally, friends and young people, in principle, fundamental principle is that we are all human, isn't it? And but we are different. We each have our own desires, we each have our own values, and we each have our own opinions. But the basic duty of every man and woman is that individually or collectively, we have some responsibility against each other, towards each other, in removing discrimination, injustice, and inequality from the society. Research has shown that no one single society can live or survive for too long without social harmony. Different people live together, we come together, we become aware of our differences, and then we tend to question the differences. But one question that we do not ask is how we have become different. Who has made us different? So my research has gave me that we are different in three major ways. Very quickly, I'll go. One is by birth. We are different by birth. Our gender, our color, our height of our body structure, our color of our hair, the shape of our nose, the shape of our ear, the color of our eyes, who our parents are, where we were born, the country we were born. We have got no choice. It is inherent, and this is inherited differences that gives each individual human the identity. Meaning I can't choose the color of my eyes. I can't choose the color of my skin. I can't choose who my parents are. I can't choose the country I'm born. I can't choose the shape of my nose. The second one is social difference. Social difference is, very quickly, is difference in culture, difference in traditions, different in ethnicity, different religion, different in values, different way we talk, different way we laugh, different things we eat, the different way we wear, the clothes that we wear, the food that we eat. The third one is where ordinary people's mind are manipulated and exploited by things that we have not seen before. And it's been created to divide us, to inflict hatred among us. And sometimes the politicians are very good at doing that, to bring out the differences. However, these differences can be controlled if we join our hands together. Firstly, there should be no discrimination on the basis of our birth, because it is natural, it's God-given. Looking at the history, we can see the societies, some of the societies were formed on economic power to dominate and suppress and exploit ordinary people, where richer can be richer, make more rich. And this was designed for poor to remain in struggle in poor state, so that the rich can have a control of power and position. Later, there was another society formed called rulers. They ruled the society by dividing people into class system. And then third is where the society got divided among itself. And they divided by caste, by color, by race, by gender, and that gave rise to further inequality, discrimination, and injustice. And that gave birth to human trading called slavery. Because of this complexity of what diversity is, people really have no choice when it comes to, as I said, biological difference, where we are born. But we do have a choice under social diversity. Say, for example, we have got freedom to choose our religion. We got freedom to choose what we want to wear. I got freedom to choose what I want to eat. I can change my behavior tomorrow. I can change my education. I can change my abilities. I can change my disabilities. I can change my values. I can change my likes and dislikes. And even I can change my language if I want to. But I do understand in some cultures it is not as easy as I'm saying. However, we can all agree today, here in this conference, that we are all human, isn't it? Inwardly, we are all same. Our body functions, most of our body functions are same. The color of our blood is same. We breathe the same air. We die same. We eat same. And we take nothing from this earth when we die. So, inwardly, if we are same, we breathe same, we eat same, we die same, we take nothing from here, then why does our outward difference matter? Why do we discriminate each other on the basis of our biological or social or external or power of our wealth? Why? Well, taking on the other side of the coin, if I take into the things that we have got common in us, is like compassion, respect, and love. How can we use this to reconcile harmony with diversity inside us? Well, probably the answer is ask few questions. But who? I believe that we have to ask I or me. We have to ask I or me some very, very serious questions. And the questions that we have to ask I believe is that I don't believe that education is a total answer. Because I believe that harmony is a work in progress. It is ongoing. People in the society come and go. People are born. New people come in, and they got to be accommodated. Therefore, it is very vital for us to understand who I am. Then I can understand, first I understand me, then I can understand you. So some of the simple questions that we can ask ourselves, friends, is, do I really know my neighbor? Or am I guessing who my neighbor is? Do I really care about the person who's sitting next to me? Do I really want to care? Do I really want to change and become humble and compassionate? In order to change ourselves, I believe we individually have to have a spirit of a sportsman, like a soccer team. A soccer team is where they got one mission, one purpose, one goal, one aspiration. Is to do what? To win the game. That's all. And here there is no color, no religion, no race. Everyone is in one spirit, in one goal, to win the game together, do or die. And the whole team is willing to change and adopt one team spirit. Similarly, we are one society, isn't it? And we are all human. And there is something common in every one of you and in me that we can share and we can value. And therefore, understanding of different culture, in my mind, is very vital in promoting peace and harmony. Culture is a valuable part of human living. It impacts, influences human views, human values, human hopes, humor, loyalty, worries, and fear. People generally behave in day-to-day living according to the inherited culture. And I got very firm in my belief that if you study each person closely, there are 5 things that you're going to find. Very quickly, you'll find that we are all human. You find that we all need love. You'll find that we got all hopes, expectations, desires, and dreams. You'll find that we all experience worries, pain, sorrow, fear, grief. And we have all experienced some sort of discrimination in our lives and injustice. Once, friends, we are able to embrace these common values in our heart, then the change will come. And the harmony in the diverse society will blossom. In this process, we are changing no one. We are changing one person that is called I. In respecting, in sharing, and accepting to change. Changing society is very easy. I tell you, you believe me. Changing society is very easy. But changing I is the hardest. Once every I changes, society is changed. Dialogue, yes, I've heard today, dialogue, yes, dialogue helps. Dialogue helps in social communities, in governments, in local governments. It provides opportunities, provides platform of building and understanding religious harmony. So in conclusion, friends, I like to leave this thought with you for you to ponder. Do I really want to change my inherited attitude that I have carrying for generations? Do I really want to change? Do I really care about the next person? Whether they are, who is different through different circumstances. Some of the difference is not the person owns, is God-given. Do I really want to embrace one community spirit of all men, regardless of color, race, religion, creed, ethnicity, and disabilities? Do I really want to change? If the answer is yes, you found one person, that is I. And that will make the difference, and the change will come, and the spirit of peace and harmony will blossom. I firmly believe, as Jesus said, loving your neighbor, regardless of who that neighbor is the road towards promoting peace and harmony in diverse community. Thank you.
You've got to acknowledge this wonderful man's passion, his positivity, and his challenge to each and every one of us, certainly. And Yeah, I'd like us to thank Jagdish again for his inspiring talk to us today, and you know, I feel like we're all ready to take up that challenge of what it means for us to take a good look at ourselves and see what we as individuals can do to promote social harmony in the midst of our diversity. So thank you, Jagdish. Is it questions now? Is it questions now? Next speaker? Yep. Okay. So following on from Jagdish, we have Ida. Yep. So I'll just get my little notes I've got here on Ida. That's okay. Ida is the Director of Public Discourse for the Australian Baha'i community, and she represents the Baha'i community in its engagement with the Australian Government, religious communities and civil society organisations at the national level on matters which have a bearing on the betterment of Australian society. This involves promoting collaboration on addressing issues of social importance, including social cohesion, the equality of women and men, the role of religion in society, interfaith relations, and the role of youth in society, amongst others. Ida has also spent several years coordinating empowerment projects and educational programs with the Australian Baha'i community across Queensland, New South Wales, Victoria and Tasmania, addressing the material, social and spiritual empowerment of people at the grassroots. Ida has a background in clinical and counselling psychology, also working with SMEs and NGOs such as Lifeline and YWCA in implementing leadership and development programs. My word. We've done well to get her here because she's obviously been very busy in her time. I would love you to please put your hands together and give a warm welcome to Ida. I'm looking forward to hearing from her.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I would like some sleep. Feeling very busy at the moment, especially towards the end of the year. So looking forward to a little break with my kids and my family during the school holidays. But it's such a pleasure to be invited to this wonderful conference, and I really would like to thank the organisers for even providing society with a space to explore who we are as a humanity and to establish a trajectory concerning where we want to be. And we all seem to have similar aspirations. I hear it in every presentation that has been shared today. I was actually thinking if we all just got around and had a conversation, I think we would be finished in about 5 minutes because we're all saying the same thing, which is great. We should be supporting each other. We should be seeing what is common amongst us because this is the age in which we live. And it's a beautiful time, I think, for us to be alive in our society, to be born in all of the different countries of the world, because I think we're experiencing a wonderful time of transition where we're really getting to know one another and we're experiencing a new type of world. So with this, you know, the world is becoming more complex. The issues we're dealing with will not be overcome overnight, but this conference, for example, is one manifestation of the vitality of religion and the contribution that it offers to the world. And I, and as well as I'm sure everybody here, is very grateful for this chance to be together. But I would like to start by sharing a short video which conveys a reflection of a youth in Australia about the impact of being involved in community building activities in her neighbourhood. So.
The youth have a unified vision and they're focusing and they're channeling a lot of their energy to, you know, transforming their communities.
I'm studying youth work and I'm hoping to do a diploma and try to get into uni and stuff like that because I thought maybe I'm doing this all the time. Why not just get my qualifications? Like, why not be able to broaden, like make it like a lot more where I can help people?
We all committed ourselves to a lifetime of service. We tutor Ruhi books together. We start core activities together. We accompany many other people, and it's a very special relationship that we share.
So, very short video, but a very powerful example, I think, of what it's like to live in a neighbourhood. And I'll be speaking today not about my work or my experience or what I do, but I'll be speaking about people like this young lady who serve in their neighbourhoods, who've been exposed to different people, different experiences that she never had before growing up, and how it's also changed her life. So, you know, we all want to see this joy in everyone that we come across, that we see in this wonderful youth, you know, of those who get to know their neighbours, regardless of whether one lives in an urban or rural setting, or in villages and towns. So what do we mean, though, by harmony? So the Baha'i writings invite us to consider that the diversity of the human family should be the cause of love and harmony, as it is in music, where many different notes blend together in the making of a perfect chord. If you meet those of a different race and a different colour from yourself, do not mistrust them and withdraw yourself to your shell of conventionality, but rather be glad and show them kindness and rejoice to be among them. So this quote, for example, guides how Baha'is relate and work with others. So it is an example, an analogy of music that we see that diversity of notes are necessary to create a beautiful chord. Harmony is not just living side by side in a state of tolerance or appreciating our diversity and differences from a distance. It is the coming together of all people to create something new and constructive which will bring true joy to all. But in order for those diverse notes and chords to contribute effectively to create music, we need a common framework, which is the musical arrangement. We also see that each note needs to see themselves as contributing what is required to create sounds which combine and complement one another. So what is this framework that the Baha'i community and their friends are drawing on to guide their efforts to foster neighbourhoods which are harmonious and vibrant? First, the vision and conviction that humanity's collective story is one that is moving towards wider degrees of cooperation and reciprocity. And it is at a stage where the needs of our time require us to embrace and be inclusive to all, regardless of background. Another element is to view the true nature of human beings as spiritual. As much as it is material, as much as it has a material and physical dimension, the human being can be likened to a mine rich with gems of qualities, capacity, and capabilities which find their highest expression when channeled towards contributing to the well-being of society. Thirdly, that humanity is seen as one family, where the progress and well-being of the individual is tied up and linked to the well-being of the whole. See ye no strangers, rather see all men as friends, for love and unity is difficult when ye fix your gaze on otherness. That's another quotation from the Baha'i writings. This view of being one family has implications on including all in contributing to the well-being of any setting. This requires spaces for consultation to be open to all, where people can reflect on what will assist social progress, to plan, to act, and then reflect on their action together. In this way, people are engaged in a collective learning process about how to work together and to enable an expanding group of people to take part. Sorry, this... I can't tell you how incredibly complex it is to scroll, to keep it from scrolling. So I apologise if I pause every now and then, and please bear with me. But hopefully it won't be distracting to you to listen to my content. So in this sense, People of all religious, cultural, philosophical, secular backgrounds or perspectives take part in learning with the Baha'i community how these principles of oneness, of unity, of collective consultation can be expressed in their neighbourhoods. And consultation really assists to examining the different perspectives and understandings, not just to reach compromise, but to reach consensus on what we can do together to contribute to the well-being of our neighbourhoods. Doing this in itself does go about creating social harmony, but what are some of the examples that these groups of friends in neighbourhoods and in localities across Australia are actually doing, which directly strengthens and maintains social harmony in a diverse community? So, for example, children come together in groups and they learn about the qualities that are within all of us, such as compassion and love and generosity and friendship. And through that process, they see those qualities in one another rather than just focusing on the difference. But with the difference, they appreciate in each other. Like we were speaking about where we're born, these are not things that we choose, but one in which we appreciate with one another. They are also exposed to the stories of all of the divine educators that have come through the ages. They create a love for them, but also they hear about how those divine educators have enabled humanity to progress and to overcome some of their challenges and to create, a beautiful society. And so in this way, these groups of children are eliminating cultural and religious prejudice within them, which may have been ingrained for many years. And this impacts their families, their friendships in school, their community life. And then we look at young teenagers, this being another example. They are learning about these faculties within them, that whether they're a boy or a girl, male or female, they all share these faculties to learn, to analyse, to discern, to use the power of expression. And so when they see that they all share these common faculties, which in the Baha'i faith are considered spiritual in nature, they are eliminating long-held prejudices or cultural norms that have existed between men and women to see each other then as equal. So then together, they look at the realities of their neighbourhoods, they think about the needs that this neighbourhood has, and then they come up with service projects to address them. And these are 12 to 15-year-olds. Many in society feel like this age don't have something to offer. Even they themselves think, I'm just still a child, but I'm not a child, but I'm not an adult, I can't do anything. But they have so much capacity. And when we see them in this way, all we want to do is assist and help them. And I'll give a story of a group that I had the privilege of going to visit, and they had seen in their particular neighbourhood that socially people didn't know how to make friends. We've spoken about neighbourhoods and how maybe we've lost this art of making friends. And so they thought, okay, at the local shops we're going to set up a stall and we'll put drinks on the table. They're free drinks, which is also uncommon. Usually you have to buy a drink. They weren't fundraising, but all they did was, as someone would approach the shops, they would say, come and have a free drink. But in taking a free drink, you have to take another one. But with this other one, you need to go to someone in this shopping area and make a new friend. And many adults said, oh my gosh, no, I don't want to do that. And so these young teenagers would insist, and they would say, I'll come with you. So they would go and they would make friends. Sometimes people hadn't seen each other for a long time, would catch up, or your children have grown. And they felt uncomfortable, but they felt good. And for that moment, everything stopped for people. They stopped being busy. They started to make friendships with people that they didn't know. And they would ask these young junior youth, why are you doing this? Why do you care so much? And they would tell them, they want to have a different neighbourhood. They want to have a different experience. They want to know people, and they want to see one another and other adults, becoming friends. So this is just one example of how the potential of this age group. Okay, this is all working for me now, so let's let's find where I need to be. Thank you for your patience. Okay, so as I said, this example illustrates that we run the risk of creating societies to become more fragmented. And so, we've been impacted by the changes and challenges of the world, some being technology, mobility, displacement, migration, but we have the potential for change. And social researchers, governments, religious groups, even the taxi driver that took me here today can see this, and they want our neighbourhoods to not have isolation or loneliness or fragmentation or prejudices. And so even with adults and youth and Baha'is and their friends are creating spaces for neighbours to visit each other, to talk to one another about their hopes and aspirations for their neighbourhoods, to overcome the obstacles of division, of prejudice, and be of selfless service to one another. But I would like to quickly close by saying something about religion. So as we can observe from this one example, amongst many, that religion is not just a set of practices or beliefs, or something that is just for personal salvation or solely relegated to the private life. Throughout history, it has been a vehicle for releasing powerful social and spiritual forces which enable people to rejoice in the differences of others and transcend prejudices and to love and forgive. It is a system of knowledge containing insights that we all freely draw on to strengthen the well-being of humanity. So we need to include people in this process beyond our own religious communities, beyond people of faith, to embrace those of no faith who have a secular or another perspective. For even the origin of the word religion comes from the Latin, which means to bind. This is the need of the age in which we live today, to bind together the hearts of all people, from our neighbourhoods through to the whole world, into one human family, and together strive daily towards the material, spiritual and social well-being of all. Thank you, and thank you for your patience too with my scrolling screen. Thank you.
I could see quite clearly how challenged Ida was, and I'd like us to thank her particularly because what a great role model in being persistent. And you might thank us for our patience, but I think you overcame some pretty impressive obstacles there. But what a beautiful vision that you've shared with us, and a real inspiration, particularly with our young people. They've got a lot to offer, yeah? And so I thank you for inspiring us. And so I might actually invite Jamal to tell us a little bit about himself when he comes up to speak. But I'd like you to put your hands together and warmly welcome Jamal to speak to us this afternoon. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Peace and blessings be on you, ladies and gentlemen. Briefly, I would introduce myself. I'm from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. Currently the chairman of the Association of Muslim NGOs in Kuala Lumpur. And I have 4 children, all of them boys. And I think that would be sufficient. I think 4 is enough.
1 was enough.
I would like to thank the organizers, Pure Land, the whole team. Is it okay? Mr. Hanif, our good friend, most respected. Mei Ling, Usin, and I have been in Toowoomba quite a few times, and I know quite a number of people. Dennis, how are you? Dennis, we had a fantastic discussion last night in Papa Rich, Dr. Peter. Yeah, fantastic. And many of Jagdish, yeah, we know each other. The first time I came here was in 2012. So it's a pleasure being here. And today, I would briefly, I remember Lee Iacocca, the person who turned around Chrysler, and he said, to give a speech. Most people, are so afraid of giving speeches. And he said, very simple, what I do is, I go up, I tell them what I want to tell them, and then I tell them, and I conclude with telling them what I told them. Simple, yeah? A simple principle that he uses. So I guess I have to tell you all what I'm going to tell you today. It's a remarkable opportunity to be here today with all friends. I would call ambassadors of peace. We have our friends from Malaysia, yeah, Hacharan Singh, Alex, yeah, Datuk Tan Boon Seng, who have come together all the way from Kuala Lumpur to share and be with the ambassadors of peace here in Toowoomba. What I would share today is there's a lot to talk. So if you give me 1 hour, then I can go through the whole mammoth of it. But since we have only 13 minutes and 13 and a half minutes left, I'm quite afraid of Andrew here in terms of timing. I will focus on the effort of the religious leaders in Malaysia, assisted by the government, to form the National Interfaith Council. It was formed in the year 2010, and I'm a member of it. Datuk Tan was a member, Hacharan Singh was also a member, and it was formed in 2010. It has a long acronym, so I would just call it the National Interfaith Council. We call it the JKMPKA. I think we have to open it. How do you move this? Oh, okay. So briefly, let me give a very brief composition of the population of Malaysia by faith. Muslims are about 61.3%. This is the previous consensus. And then you have Buddhists, 19.8%. Christians of various denominations, 9.2%. And then you have Hindus, 6.3%. And Confucius and Taoists is about 3.4% really. So this is a general consensus. It's a diverse society based on the majority of Muslims. And then this is where Malaysia is situated. Yeah, Malaysia, I think all of you know. Right down here is down under. Yeah, this is down under. And you have Singapore here. Okay. And China is here. So this is the South China Sea. And this is where we are in what is called Southeast Asia. Yeah, ASEAN, Association of Southeast Asian Nations. I think you know what happened in Malaysia. Very interesting. After 61 years, there was a change of government on the 9th of May this year. And the winning coalition, ironically, was headed by the former Prime Minister, Tun Dr. Mahathir, who was the Prime Minister for 22 years and retired in the year 2003. So he came back at a grand old age of 93 years old. The oldest head of government in the world now, for forever. And what that has done to all of us, that was the impact of him being 93 years old, the impact of him working 18 hours a day in such a complex situation, a country that has quite a bit of problems that has been left over by the previous government. What that has done, looking at him working right up to 2 a.m. in the morning, is every one of us are now excited and we feel energized. Now a 70, 80-year-old who was thinking, that's it, I'm just waiting to die, is already up on his feet now and saying, I can do a lot of things. The impact of it is significant by just the example given by Tun Dr. Mahathir. So I think that's a very positive things that's happening on the world. Even for me, which I'm still 39, because that's the highest number I know. It has changed my mindset to say no. Even if you are into civil society, you have gone from the corporate world to civil society, you really have to do your best. And this is what we should do. We should do the best for what we want to do here. Interfaith harmony, for peace and harmony in society. That is a very big and noble cause, really. So, this was in Ramadan last year, just 2 months after he became the Prime Minister. We attended a break of fast with him. And this is the picture of the Interfaith Council with the former Prime Minister. Okay. I think the name is not so clear. Okay, this is a committee, JKMPK National, represented by 32 members, comprising of religious leaders, academics, and CSO activists. The objective is to promote understanding and harmony. There's two things, understanding and harmony in society. And some of the programs that we have attended, just very briefly, the National Day celebration, and this is the representative of the Interfaith Council, and we were the first in the front of the National Day parade. You know this group? So this is the World Interfaith Harmony Week celebration, which is the first week of February, and you have all these leaders, you know. So you have like, this is the head of the Catholic Church, the Hindu priest, and the Buddhist. And it's a celebration, I think, that's celebrated all over the world. Yeah, I'm not sure whether you celebrate here in Australia. World Interfaith Harmony Week, the 1st February. It's a United Nations initiative. Yeah. What are the values that we adhere to? You know, we have this committee, we are talking about things, we want to do big things. What are the values? Okay, the values are, the word here, muhibbah. Muhibbah is a Malay word. In Arabic, it means mahabbah, to like, to love. It's not tolerance, it's beyond tolerance. To like, to accept, to love, yeah? That is the meaning of it. And then we were smart people, so we coined something up. From the word muhibbah, we came up with what are the values. And I think this is a fantastic thing. The values, musyawarah. Musyawarah, which is dialogue. Okay? Then you have ukhwah, kinship. Harmony. Harmony. Ikhlas, sincerity. And then you have bersangka baik, which is mutual trust. Amanah, integrity. Hormat, respect. So these are the 7 values that we hold to. And I will give a slight an analysis of what has happened to the committee members from the year 2010 to 2018 later in the slides. And let's just look very briefly on the causes of disharmony. some of the causes of disharmony that I believe that when we talk about harmony, we should also look at what is the causes of disharmony, and we should address the causes of disharmony. One of it is radical misinterpretation of ethical and spiritual core of the religion, out of context by certain people with certain motives. They have these motives, so we have to look at them, and these people are 0.01%, 0.0001% of the population. So we have to take it in context and not blame the 99.99% for this kind of behavior. The other thing is military occupation, causes of disharmony, war, violence. You have poverty, poverty, high unemployment, huge income disparity. I was so fascinated by Dr. Ken's presentation. He very vividly explained the trends and the differences. It is tremendous. What we have now is a situation where income disparity is so huge. With the coming of the new media, 9 out of the 10 largest corporations in the world is from the new media. There's no more the old brick and mortar business. The only company that's staying there, it's still there, is ExxonMobil. And the rest is all your Googles, your Amazons, and your Alibaba, and so on. If you look at, very simply, there is the market capitalization of Apple. Probably has gone down recently a bit, but it's just exceeded $1 trillion US dollars, higher than the GDP of Saudi Arabia and South Africa combined. And it's more than 3 times the GDP of Malaysia. And you look at Jeff Bezos, his worth is now 140 billion US dollars. And that is higher than most of the countries' GDP in the world. So this disparity will eventually create a lot of disharmony. And of course, certainly other things like corruption and greed, racism and ignorance. Corruption is a serious thing, because if once you let corruption breed, what will happen is it will impact the whole population in terms of services, in terms of well-being, in terms of income, jobs, and so on. So that has to be curbed. Okay, this is interestingly, last month we had a very nice, interesting seminar, Religious Values in Countering Extremism. What we did was we decided to get a movie, and after the movie we had a forum. So during the time of the movie, we did it in the University of Malaya. At the start of the forum, there was about 200 people. We said, the hall can fit about 450 people. But once it was dark, and 10 minutes into it, we looked behind, the hall was packed, especially with university students who wanted to probably come to see the movie. It was free of charge. And what we found out from this forum is that that religion, we wanted to find whether religion was a major factor behind extremism. And we found out that was not the case. A study by the leading terrorism expert, Dr. Robert Pape of University of Chicago, who studied on suicide terrorism from 1980 to 2003. He studied 315 cases worldwide. He concluded, and I quote, "There is little or no connection between the religion and suicide bombing. 95% of suicide attacks were in response to military occupation. Has little connection to Islamic fundamentalism or any other religion. It has a specific strategic reason to compel modern democracies to withdraw military forces from territories that they consider their homeland. So it is hardly anything to do with religion. And when I asked the film producer, why did you choose the film which was a context of, the setting was in Kashmir, India. It was about Muslims. And he said, I quote, his simple answer was that Muslims and Islam are by far the main targets of extremism. If you look at the world, more than 2/3 of the world's refugees are Muslims. So, and the word Islam means peace and submission to God. So how can you be peaceful, submit to God, and you are a terrorist? That is a paradox there. Okay, now let's briefly look again at the road to social harmony. If I may quickly, how many minutes do I have? Looks like, oh my goodness, time's up, wow. Okay, the road to social harmony, I think to respect each other's values and beliefs, accepting diversity, that one size cannot fit all. There is differences. There is a core similarity, but there are differences in values and system. Yeah. So dialogue and understanding will help bring the gap together. Yeah. And then there's a few things I will mention. I think time is up. Then the concept of justice, if I may, the concept of justice in Islam is putting right things in the right place. Yeah. For example, the relationship between men and women in Islam is complementary. It's not in competition. So I have a joke, but I think I don't have the time. So it's a very interesting story, but I'll leave it up. And then a quick brief, yeah, Andrew, just what happened to the members that I see, JKMPKA, the Interfaith Council members, this diverse group of 30 of them, leaders of religion. In 2010, we were less familiar with each other as religious leaders. Some decided we don't want to have meetings in Muslim institutions. We wanted to have a neutral place at that time. Interest was sectarian instead of national interest, you know. People are more open. Unionist syndrome, skipping demand, and being quite demanding, making it a complaints bureau, and then less interactions out of the meetings. But in 2018, things have changed. Not only accept meetings in Muslims-based institutions, the non-Muslims lecture in Muslim-based institutions, like the Institute of Islamic Understanding, and then they also attend courses, visit each other during festivals. We have good friendly relations. My teachers are here. Hacharan Singh, Tan Bun Singh, Alex, Mana Alex not here. And the advantage of this is when you get to know if there's any issues that come up, we solve it very quickly before the politicians and the press knows. Yeah. So I think that's happening. So this is a course that we have on mediation in the International Islamic University. And we graduated as mediators just last month. You can see this is the head of the Borneo Anglican Church. This is a Baha'i, this is a Sikh, and he's a Tao. These are the professors.
And before we end our show tonight, here's an example of Interfaith Harmony Act that we all should emulate. While the mosque is often seen as exclusive to Muslims, a recent event was held at the Al-Shakirin Surau in Banda Utama for people of all faiths to learn more about Islam. In collaboration with the Hidayah Center Foundation, the Mosque Open Day is a program aimed at bringing community members from all faiths and walks of life to understand Islam through religious institutions such as the mosque as one-stop center for activities and the society development. Program Director Jamal Shamsudin says the program is also conducted to help people of all faiths to understand the religion better. Among the exciting activities during this program include a tour of the surau, including the main prayers hall. Meanwhile, Bandar Utama Buddhist Society Deputy President Shamsudin shares his experience after entering the prayer room.
It's very good because they also show us how to wash our hands, wash our leg, wash our face. Very refreshing before we go in. And they also teach us how to do a proper 7 points prayer and posture and so on, and explain the whole structure of the whole thing. And very interesting first time.
Conclusion is the national interfaith is a noble effort, in my view, of the government to enforce social harmony in a diverse society. The initiative brought together all the leaders, the activists, the academics, and I would say despite its shortcomings, it's a resounding success and still a work in progress. So there's a need to continue to work on common issues, leaving the doctrinal differences aside, working on commonalities, and we need to respect and accept our differences. Maybe the National Interfaith Council of Malaysia, JKMPKA, can take a page of the success story of Toowoomba, being the model city of peace and harmony, true to its name. So I thank you very much. Good day. Thank you. Ooh. I would like to talk about that. Thank you. Okay.
Isn't it a shame we don't have more time? There's so many good things happening in Malaysia, and it just kept coming, didn't it? More and more good things. So I'd like us to put our hands together again and thank Jamal, for all the work he did in preparing that wonderful speech. It was good. Okay, moving right along with our conversation about promoting social harmony in a diverse setting. I'd like to introduce our next speaker, who has a passion for engineering and consequently obtained a master's degree in mechanical engineering. Whilst experiencing difficulties with his career in Afghanistan, migrated to Pakistan and then came to Australia in 1991 and continued his studies in theology and Islam, and has a master's degree in translating and interpreting, which he got from Melbourne. And from 2012, he has been teaching courses that are part of the Diploma and Advanced Diploma of Interpreting Curriculum at RMIT in Melbourne. He's a professional translator, interpreter, and as a community religious leader for Williat Society of Australia, and as the principal of a local community called Hekma. So please, this wonderful man is managing, has a profession has his main focus as managing family issues and youth counselling. And I'd like you to put your hands together for Natalia Zara. Sorry, my apologies. Yeah. Thank you.
In the name of Allah, the entirely merciful, the especially merciful, all praises due to God, the Lord of the worlds, and peace and blessings of God be upon his messengers, Adam, Noah, Abraham, Moses, John, Jesus, and the last prophet, Muhammad, peace be upon them all. He sent down messengers out of mercy to purify mankind, to teach them the book and wisdom, and to bring them out from the darkness of ignorance to the light of knowledge and wisdom. On this note, ladies and gentlemen, peace be upon you all. Assalamu alaikum. I would like to thank the Pure Land community of Toowoomba, amazing personalities like Mr. Hanif, Mailing, Mia, and all their colleagues who made this great event and conference to take place. I acknowledge and respect the rights of the owners of the land, their elders past and present. It is an honor to be amongst the ambassadors of peace from all over the world, including the great speakers and all participants today here. We have all gathered here today to not only contribute towards reviving peace, but also in maintaining it. They say a 1,000-mile journey begins with a single step. This is our step in itself. It is in action and a means of a remedy towards our common goal of such for the sake of those innocent beings who have no peace. To get to the point and make it clearer, we, metaphorically speaking, need to build a shelter of peace and harmony. Let's imagine the innocent faces of the vulnerable people in the communities around the world, regardless of their race or religion. The yearning hearts of the traumatized children that are shivering with fear, wondering, what have I done wrong? The issue can be dissected from the very basic of peace, beginning from our day-to-day lives. I ask myself, what disturbs peace within one's self and environment? I managed to find a very relevant example based on our family environment. When a member of the family becomes careless towards their household duties, eventually someone else becomes burdened with completing that particular task. It is not only unjust for the individual who must take on these extra tasks, but it causes injustice and creates an imbalance in the family. This ultimately disrupts the peaceful environment of the home. Now, if everyone takes responsibility for their own duties, it becomes clockwork, therefore creating a peaceful and harmonious environment where the family can grow, function, and reach its full potentials. Such is an example of how peace and harmony can be achieved on a small scale. Moving on, when a country invades, usurps, and seizes the right of another country, it results in conflict, destruction, famine, loss of lives, and homelessness, to name a few. We end up to witness such a horrible experience of the innocent children happening right now. And let's watch this short video to reflect and to actually witness what is happening right now.
الإنسان إذا ما ابتلاه ربه فأكرمه ونعمه فيقول ربي أكرمن وأما إذا ما ابتلاه فقدر عليه رزقه فيقول ربي أهانن كلا بل لا تكرمون اليتيم ولا تحاضون وتأكلون التراث أكلا لما وتحبون المال حبا جما كلا إذا دكت الأرض دكا دكا وجاء ربك والملك صفا صفا وجيء يومئذ بجهنم يومئذ يتذكر الإنسان يومئذ يتذكر الإنسان وأنى له الذكرى يقول يا ليتني قدمت لحياتي يقول يا ليتني قدمت لحياتي فيومئذ لا يعذب عذابه أحد ولا يوثق وثاقه أحد.
I'm so sorry to actually hurt everyone's feeling, but this is the reality, and this is what we experience, and this is what we witness and they experience. And you and I, my respected colleagues, audience, we are here to make a difference towards this situation. There is a beautiful statement from the grandson of Prophet Muhammad, who is respected by Mahatma Gandhi, and Mahatma Gandhi says, I took the lessons and directions in order to bring peace and elaborate the subcontinent of India by the teachings of Imam Hussein. And Imam Hussein says, if anyone remains silent while atrocity is happening, they will be entered to the same punishment that those oppressors. We cannot remain silent, because silence is an act of, when we see atrocity, it is an act of, it's committing sin. So, to move on this note, I learned from the teaching of Islam, particularly from the beloved Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who would say, all living beings are part of God's household. We can't find a statement better than this. And I'm sure, I'm not saying there is superiority and uniqueness in this religion over other religions. No, I'm not here to say that. The same concept I heard from Jesus. The same concept I heard from, because I've studied religiosity and religion to some extent. From Moses, from the statements from Buddhism, from Buddha, and from Taoism, all. So there are always common term. And the beauty of today's gathering is that we always, there is an issue, or we always say that if there is miscommunication or lack of communication, it ends up to some issues. And thanks again for the facilitators that brought us along to communicate, to open our hearts and speak to each other, and whether individually or from behind this podium here. So we have a lot in common. And one of the saying of the very core of Islamic teachings, I would like to share with you if you haven't heard of this. Imam Ali, as Ada and my brother Jamal, actually they know him. Imam Ali is the cousin and one of the greatest leaders of Islam, considered by Christians and Muslims and non-Muslims. He says, when he appointed a governor to Egypt, that imagine Egypt was one of the states that he was ruling large part of the world. And he says to that, as a commandment to the governor of Egypt, so you must make sure the two rights of people over there upon you must not be usurped. What are these two rights? Either they are brother in religion or the same in humanity. So can we find anyone to be out of this domain of these two rights? And to focus on this point, it means the first and foremost, the starting point between you and I as a common ground is humanity. First and foremost, this innocent child, I don't know where this child is actually from, but don't you feel for her, and don't I feel for her? So the common religion, as we say, for example, from the secularistic perspective or from the faith or religious perspective, we have a lot in common. We cannot eradicate or eliminate any religion, even if we, for some reason, we don't like it, which is not the case amongst us, but some people, some individuals say, okay, I don't like, for example, this particular philosophy. We cannot eradicate, but as a human being, we can manage to live in harmony. If we have really this chance, or we take the initiative to communicate, we find a way to live with anyone from any background in this world in harmony. Even in this, to be a roommate. I have experienced personally myself. Because my job as a professional interpreter, I've been traveling around Australia and outside Australia on deployments. And I have lived and I've shared the room with people, the interpreters from different backgrounds, every religion and different languages and all these. Never had any issue. When our approach is really a very mature approach and we behave in a way that common sense accepts that behavior, then we won't have any issues. That is the common religion, or the common thing amongst the religion. And I would like to share a very short verse from the Quran. God says in chapter 5, verse number 32, it says, if one person is taking the life of one innocent human being, in the sight of God, he has committed a sin as if he has taken the life of entire humanity. It doesn't say Muslims' life. It doesn't say Christians. It said people. Here I've got, I don't want to, read it says Nas, ka'ahyan, qatalan nasa jamiya. Nas means people. And on the contrary, he says, if one single person takes this initiative and saves the life of one person, again, he is rewarded and he is considered as saving the life of entire humanity. This is the religion. Who can disagree to this point? Can't we use this and adopt this? In the end of the day, believe me, if our colleagues here and the audience and participants, with any religion comes and put these kind of ideas on the table, first of all, my religion actually encourages me and recommend strongly to go and follow that point. Another verse from the Quran, which is shortly, it says, O Muhammad, give this good news to those of my servants who listen to the words and follow the best of it. It doesn't say don't listen to your Christian brethren, don't listen to Baha'is, don't listen to, Buddhist, or don't listen to someone who has come from the Taoist background. In all these, you can't do this. So we use our intellect, and whatever makes sense, we take it on board, and we practice it, we put it in action. Otherwise, something must be wrong here if we don't do it. So I would like to conclude on one beautiful statement, again from Imam Ali, which fascinates me. He says, watch and be careful of your thoughts. Later on, that will become your action. And be careful of your actions, which later on, that will become your habits. And watch and be careful of your habits, that will become your destiny. Either you will be doomed completely, entirely, and eternally, according to all religions. You will go to the hellfire, or you will be prosperous, and you will be enjoying the Garden of Eden and a paradise. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Thank you.
What a thoughtful presentation Imam has given to us this afternoon, and there's so much in it, but our hearts were open, hey? Our hearts were open to try and commit ourselves more and more to making common sense more common. I mean, there's a lot of reflection around what you've said, Imam, but I'd like us all to thank Imam again for his generosity in sharing with us. Now, just make sure we've got this on. So, Jagdish, the first question obviously is for yourself. Please repeat the three main differences again. When Jesus said, go and make disciples, so there's two parts to this question. The first part is, please repeat the three main differences again.
Thank you for the question. The three differences that I mentioned was, number one was biological difference, that is difference by birth, which means we can't choose our birth, where we are born, who our parents going to be, who our mother going to be, who our father going to be, the country that we are born in. We can't choose. I can't choose the color of my skin. I can't choose the color of my eyes. I can't choose the style of my hair. I can't choose. Even if I'm born disabled, I'm born black, I can't choose. It's not my choice. It's God-given. So that's one difference, which is a biological difference. The second difference is, which I mentioned, was social difference, where we differ from each other by cultures, traditions, ethnicity, behavior, religious values, the way we talk, the way we eat, the clothes we wear, the food we eat, the way we laugh, our wealth, our jobs. We differ in the social. And the third one is external difference. External difference is that somebody else's brings and shows and points the difference to us, which we are not aware of. Say, for example, politicians, sometimes when they want a vote from you, they will come and show you something that you have never seen before or never heard before, and they will try and create a division so that you vote for them, and then they put a bond between us and we fight. So that's a difference that we have not seen before. Somebody else is exposed to us. So that's the three differences that I mentioned.
Thank you, Jagdish. While you've still got the microphone, the second part of that question is, when Jesus said, go and make disciples, Jagdish, did he mean that all people had to become Christian?
Can you repeat the question?
So when Jesus said, go and make disciples, did this mean that Jesus meant that all people had to become Christian?
No. Jesus never dictated anywhere in the Bible. I have not read anywhere in the Bible where Jesus brought a discrimination between people. When even he sent 2 by 2, there are 72 that he sent 2 by 2. He said, go and visit every home. That means, he said, when you go to a home, that home even don't accept you. What does that mean? Did he say go to the Christian home? No. He said, go and visit every home. And who accepts you, go and eat with them, sleep there, stay there, talk with them, and have a conversation with them. And those who chase you out, don't want you, then you drop your dust and go. So he did not mention that you have to go into Christian home or what. Jesus never mentions Christian.
Okay. Ida, the next question is directed to yourself, and it says, the Baha'i
explicitly says that teaching people about his message is a necessary part of being Baha'i. So what is the difference between teaching and proselytising?
So I guess from my understanding, teaching is equated to generosity, to sharing. And in the similar way in which I was conveying what the Baha'is and their friends are doing, these principles of equality in men and women, the one family, the one human family, which we're trying to understand and create, these core principles of unity in the Baha'i faith, are ones that we actually already own. They're already a part of us. And even the teachings of Baha'u'llah are for everyone. But in not the sense that one has to convert, but one can embrace these teachings. Even the practices of the Baha'i faith can be embraced. And it's also the act of sharing but not forcing one's beliefs on others. And I think that's the fine line that we need to walk and navigate, because we understand that an important element of us being human being is this ability to investigate reality for ourselves. And it is really the role and responsibility of the individual to do that investigation. So when someone else is imposing their beliefs on another, you're almost taking away that God-given capacity that they have been given. And so in that way, sharing is something that we all do. We must be generous with our food, our belongings, our money, our talents and capacities, but also the knowledge that we have, but the knowledge that is going to contribute to the betterment of society, whether it be knowledge from religion, whether it be knowledge from science. We must all be in this mode of sharing. And what has been also conveyed here is this active dialogue is so necessary. So if we're not sharing generously without imposing, we actually can't learn and advance from one another. So I guess it's the approach that is really important.
Thank you. Okay, let's just big round of applause to Jamal. Jamal, how does the Islamic community in Malaysia counter the compelling messages of radical Islam being promoted on social media?
Thank you for the question. I think any radical interpretation in Malaysia is not tolerated. In fact, in the police force, we have a special unit that monitors these activities. It's called the Counter-Terrorism Squad in the police field force that has been successful in nipping the problems in the bud. They have been successful so far to the extent that basically there's no elements or actions of violence that we can remember, except for maybe, in fact, there was a few groups that has been exposed, identified before they were even planning to do anything. Yeah. Okay. So historically, if you look even over the past 5-10 years, there's no significant extremist actions by any of these deviant groups. As I mentioned, terrorism or extremism has no religion. I think that's very important.
And that's
Thanks.
very encouraging, Jamal. Just thank you. I've just got one quick question. We're going to just have one quick question. What? Oh, yes, Richard. This is important. Really? Okay. Well, look, we could spend all afternoon. It's been wonderful. Big round of applause for our panellists. Thank you. All right. There you go. I can vouch for that. That was true. All the best.
Thank you. Would you thank Nicole and the panellists, please? Better get my notes. Okay. You can relax. That's it. We've got to move on to our next part of the program. Part of the issue of being an MC is one does have to be a little hard at times, unfortunately. So I hope you bear with us on that. But by all means, talk to any of the panellists from all the panels in respect to questions you may have. We try and cover as much ground as possible, but time is very limited in a conference situation like this. I'm going to now invite Professor Michael Cuthill to come to the stage. He is going to talk about and bring us up to speed on the key findings from the workshop Community Capacity Building for Peace and Harmony in Toowoomba, which occurred, I believe, yesterday. And Professor Cuthill is known to us all. He's recognised both in Australia and internationally for his evidence-based and collaborative approach to addressing community challenges and aspirations. He's now working as a private consultant for major public, private and community sector organisations, and he works in a voluntary capacity with Pure Land Learning College, supporting the Toowoomba Peace and Harmony Initiative. And he's brought friends. So we haven't a huge amount of time, as you know, Michael, but that's fine. Give it a go. Would you welcome Michael and his friends?
Good afternoon, everyone. We're a snapshot session, and then I believe afternoon tea's after us. No? Sorry. Have any of you heard of the term community capacity building? Okay, a few nods there, a few yeses. Yeah, I know the people at the workshop yesterday have heard of it. You don't need to put your hands up. Okay. Broadly, community capacity building relates to enhancing people's skills, knowledge and networks so that they can take informed action in their communities for the common good. That's a really broad definition, just so you know what we're talking about to start with. A capacity building philosophy is illustrated by the fairly well-known saying that if you give someone a fish, you feed them for a day. If you teach them to fish, they can feed themselves for a lifetime. Yesterday we had a workshop focusing on community capacity building for peace and harmony. So taking it from the broad to the specific, the theme of peace and harmony was the focus of this workshop. The 23 workshop participants from, I think there were 6 countries, but I couldn't remember which was the 6th one, shared their diverse experience with their faith and interfaith groups from those different countries, cultures and faiths, how they worked with communities to build peace and harmony. 3 of the participants from the workshop have kindly volunteered, or were sort of volunteered, to reflect on some of the points that came out of the workshop. So each of the participants has been asked to not report from the workshop. They are reflecting on what came out of the workshop. So it is their perspectives. We're not pretending that this is what everybody in the workshop came up with, but it gives you an idea of what people shared and learnt during the workshop yesterday. So each of the participants here are going to give us 5 to 7 minutes, a quick overview of a couple of points. Each of them has different points to cover. First up, we have Terry Ailing from the Gold Coast, and Terry is with the Charter for Compassion. So could you please welcome Terry?
Thank you, Michael. One of the things that become very clear to us is that the issue of context is of vital importance, that we can only really ever speak out of our own experience, and although there are valuable lessons to learn from the experience of others, they need to be contextualised. In our group yesterday, we had representatives from Australia, from Brunei, from Singapore, Malaysia, and the US and Mexico. there were Christians, Sikhs, Buddhists, and a predominant number of Muslim people. But even in those countries where the Muslim faith was the predominant faith, there was a real difference between the way in which that faith played out. For instance, in Singapore, where it's written within the constitution about the respect for all faiths and traditions and their right to pray and to propagate their faith. In the Malaysian context and in the Brunei context, which is even more kind of conservative and focused. Notwithstanding that, there were also an awareness that on a global kind of scale, that things that happen in one context can impact very quickly on our own context, and our ability to adapt to those experiences is also very, very important. The other issue of context that we grappled with was the issue of the small grassroots initiatives that often come from the ground up, and top-down initiatives, and the way to harmonise those and to create a space where we can facilitate initiatives that come from the bottom up, from the top down, from the outside in, and from the inside out. So the context that I'm reflecting on very briefly is the Australian context, and my experience with the Charter for Compassion, and particularly the project on the Gold Coast that I'm working with. As Weston said earlier, the Australian society is moving very, very quickly. And in the last census, around 30% of the people indicated that they were not aligned with any religious tradition or faith. They may be spiritual, but not religious. When I recently attended the Parliament of World Religions, I was challenged by a colleague who said, "Terry, I think I'm past interfaith." And it teased me for a while, but I think I settled at the same place, because my experience is this. A couple of weeks ago, a little baby was washed up onto the beach on the Gold Coast, a victim of a toxic mix of homelessness, racial issues, domestic violence, and mental health. It wasn't the Imam or the rabbi or the Christian priest that called the community together. It was two young mothers who, moved by compassion, set up a little memorial on the beach and then invited people to come and to be a part of a gathering. When the community gathered there, there was nobody to provide leadership for them. I just happened to be one of the people there standing on the fence, and they asked me would I lead the gathering. It wasn't a religious gathering, nor was I going to make it one. It was a human gathering that had been come out of the compassion of these two young mothers. My concern is that in the Australian context, it's not a question of us asking who is not at the table. It's whether whether the religious faith community actually has a place at the wider table. Whether we have the respect, the trust, and the opportunity to participate in the wider conversations that in the past we used to host. And so my sense is, in the Australian context, the issue of peace and harmony is not something that we are leading anymore. Of course, we need to, within our own traditions and faiths and our own communities, encourage interfaith dialogue and conversation. We need to respect each other. But my sense that the Australian community has moved on from that. They expect that as a foundation of our society. And if we're to play a role in that into the future, we're going to have to get with the program and be alongside them and to bring our wisdom and our insights into that conversation.
Thanks very much, Terry. And as you can see, we're just giving you snapshots with 23 people there yesterday and small working groups. These topics were discussed and common topics came up across each of the 4 groups. So please follow up with Terry or with any of the other members here for more details on those discussions. Our second speaker is Fiona Lim from Singapore. Fiona is with onepeople.sg, and maybe she'd like to tell you a little bit about who that actually is. Can you welcome Fiona, please?
Thank you, Michael. Just a brief introduction of myself. My name is Fiona. I come from Singapore and I work with onepeople.sg, which is actually an NGO in Singapore that promotes racial and religious harmony. So I would first like to thank the organizers and for the opportunity to actually attend this conference and also the workshop yesterday. It was really a very good session and I would like to share some experiences with you. There were actually some discussions that happened yesterday that were really relatable to me. So allow me to actually share some personal stories with you. I was, a few years back, I was with some of my friends in college working on a project in a common space when a group of peers approached us. And they sat down with us and started chatting with us. So we invited them to join us with an open mind, and we started conversing about very casual topics until slowly we realized that they actually had an agenda of pushing their own beliefs and trying to get us to join them in their activities. So my friends started feeling really uncomfortable during this whole experience. And because in Singapore, even though we are allowed to bring across our own beliefs to people in public, the approach actually makes a big difference. So with my friends being very uncomfortable in that sort of a setting, I tried to dismiss the issue and we moved on to other topics. So in this context, let's bring it to another example where people were more receptive of these kind of beliefs being pushed, being brought over to them, to their thoughts. So once, when I was younger, I went volunteering at a seniors activity center with my aunt. And we helped an old couple specifically who had no children with their food, their health checkups. We brought them to the doctors and also bringing them out for activities like a trip to the Chinese garden in Singapore. And during the Christmas party, this old lady actually cried and asked me and my aunt why we were treating them so well, because being a couple with no children, other than the social services, there was nobody that was helping them and they had no support. So my aunt actually said that it was because God taught her and to be compassionate and help people in need. So it was then that the old lady actually became more open to find out what kind of education that me and my aunt has went through that has brought us to do these kinds of good deeds. So after that day, the old lady started following us to church services, and we actually learned a lot from there as well. So in conclusion, all religions teach good values. The stories that I mentioned earlier are more towards my own personal background, but I believe that all religions do good work. So having an audience that is more receptive to your beliefs might take more effort, but letting others be inspired by our actions and inquire about your beliefs rather than approaching them about it while they are unreceptive is more effective. By my aunt's example, I also learned that even though our voluntary work is driven by our religious beliefs, we should also always remember that we are being humans while helping people in need. And we should always take a step back from religion and take a step forward towards humanity. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Fiona. Do people in the audience remember the first time they did a public presentation? Sort of remember being a bit nervous, maybe? Okay. Fiona's colleagues tell me that was her first public presentation. So well done. Our third speaker is Imran, also from Singapore. Imran's with the Harmony Centre and the Centre for Interfaith Understanding. And once again, he may give us a couple of words about what those two centres are.
Thank you, Michael. Any one of you have climbed Tabletop Mountain, which is nearby here? Great. I climbed that mountain 3 years ago when I came to Toowoomba, and initially it was quite an easy climb until the final part where it really went steep, right? And I wasn't prepared for that. I wasn't wearing the right gear, attire, and shoes. But then I remind myself that I came to that place not to ask why the mountain was there, but I came to that place to tell myself that I'm going to climb that mountain. And I come from Singapore, which according to Pew Research Center based in America, in 2014 is the most religiously diverse nation in the world. And therefore doing interfaith work, doing work for peace and social harmony has never been an easy task. It's always a challenge, and that's how I approach it. That I will not tell myself why the mountain is there, but I will tell myself I came to conquer, or rather not to conquer, to climb that mountain. So that has been my approach in confronted with challenges in doing interfaith work. And what I'm glad from participating in the workshop yesterday is that it provided an opportunity for many of us to take a step back, to reflect together, and to discuss ways to improve upon which we can actually contribute better towards community capacity building efforts for social peace and harmony. But what is it really to affirm social peace and harmony? And we've been taught by Michael very effectively that there cannot be true peace and harmony without social and environmental justice, without economic equality, strong political voice, affirmation of personal, religious, and cultural identity. Now, to achieve this, for me personally, is to constantly ask who is not at the table. That is a theme that has been recurring a lot in today's presentations. By this, I mean whose voices have we not heard? And it's not just the voices of the marginalized communities and groups, but also our inner voice that possibly we have not heard enough. It's that inner conscience within us also that we have not really paid attention to. Now, why is asking who is not at the table is such an important question? Firstly, by asking that question, it reveals our blind spots. It reveals our biases and prejudices. And that allows us to correct ourselves at times, to check upon ourselves, and also to do an internal critique of ourselves, of our own communities, of our own groups, of our own country, of our own position in this world amidst differences. It can also enrich us in terms of our perspectives when we begin to listen and to understand and to learn from each other. And thirdly, it allows us to strive towards greater inclusivity. Now, a society that does not pay attention to the excluded amongst them is a recipe for disaster. It's a time bomb that will haunt us in the future because excluded groups will get, they will feel they have no part to play in society, and eventually they will form their own exclusionary spaces, and that's where we will have conflicts and strife and tensions. When people feel that they don't have a stake in the society that they live in, then they will not find a reason to build a society based on the common good for all. Each one will live for their own selves, and that is a recipe for disaster. Community building work for me is always about finding the common good for all, and in doing so, we cannot but be as inclusive as possible. And by that, it means regardless of ethnicity, regardless of color, language, religion, including not having a religion, country of origin, social class, gender, sexual orientation, culture, political affiliation, and what else that you have, right? We are one, but we are many, but what is that many, and who have we excluded? when we say that we have Christians amongst us, for example, or we have Muslims amongst us, when we have Buddhists amongst us, do we also ask the diversity within each of the religion? Or are we going through a representation of only one particular representation of a religious community? For example, when we talk about, we have Muslims in the audience, do we ask, are there Sunnis, are there Shias, are there Sufis, or are there people with different ideas on Islam? So we open up the space in order to embrace the deep diversity amongst us. And in facing our differences, we remind ourselves that underneath the labels and categories, there is always that common humanity. And that humanity in all of us is sacred and worthy of dignity. So coming back to the question, who is not at the table, I think we can also push further the question and ask who owns the table. Because who owns the table gets to decide also who will not be at the table. And also we can push it further and ask, for who? The gathering at the table is for who and for whom? I think that is a question that will make many of us uncomfortable, but I think it's necessary in order to achieve social justice, economic equality, strong political voice, affirmation of the personal, religious, and cultural identity. And I will end by citing one story of one of my mentors. In fact, he's a good mentor of mine, the late Reverend Yap Kim Hao, who was the first Asian bishop of the Methodist Church in Singapore. He passed away last year, and someone came to him and asked, Reverend, will I end up in heaven or hell? And his answer was, where you go, I'll go. I think that's a very profound answer. It connects the salvation issue to one another. That he recognized that the salvation of that person who was asking is also tied to his salvation and vice versa. I think that's how we should see our position in this world, where we can never achieve true peace without asking ourselves how much we are complicit in the whole process and how much we are connected to each other, and therefore we can work towards the common good together because we recognize that we will always be interconnected. Thank you.
Thank you, Imran. Now, we had designed this session to be short and sharp and to give an opportunity for questions, and we've still got 5 minutes. No. I would certainly urge you to come and see the people up here if you have some questions. So I would like to finish with one challenge which was identified during the workshop that you might want to take away with you and reflect on a little. So it's been mentioned in a couple of ways by all of the speakers, and it was mentioned and discussed, identified and discussed in all 4 working groups. How can you facilitate a meaningful dialogue around peace and harmony that involves the people who are not involved with your faith group? How do you bring those outside in the community that are not involved in faith groups to be part of the peace and harmony movement? So we can all work with each other, but how do we work with all the rest of the people out there? So I'll leave that with you to reflect on. I'd especially like you to give these volunteers another round of applause for presenting today.
And could you also please thank Professor Cuthill for his moderation of this short and sharp session. According to the timetable, afternoon tea isn't for another hour, but we've got a few stage management things to do so we can get set up for the Q&A conversation with the Toowoomba Interfaith Working Group, and that's being chaired by Bishop Cameron. So I need all the members of the Toowoomba Interfaith Working Group who are here to come this way to the stage, and we'll resume in about 5 minutes. So we've got 5 minutes to quickly grab a drink of water or just stretch our legs or do what we feel we'd like to do, and then I'll hand over to Bishop Cameron. So we've got 5 minutes.